Hi friends, welcome back to Arc Tutorials. This is Angular 10 full tutorial series for absolute beginners. In today's episode, we are going to learn about the folder structure that comes with the default vanilla Angular application. However, in most practical use cases, your folder structure might change a little bit or may become a little more exhaustive, but overall, the folder structure of most Angular applications will follow the same suite. Which means that once you get an understanding of the basic folder structure, you will be in a much better position to understand the existing code, and also for new projects, you'll be able to better organize and stay in much more symmetric and structured way. This is part 7 of the Angular 10 full tutorial playlist. I have planned around 100 tutorials for you, including live project in this particular series. Make sure that you check out the description box, because that's where I'm going to put all the links, the code and the notes that we will make in this particular series. That being said, we are in the 7th episode, and make sure that you have gone through the previous episodes because you don't want to miss out on the previous learnings. Also, if you have any doubts during this particular series, please feel free to drop your comments or queries in the comments section and I will be happy to help you. That being said, let's get started with today's topic, which is the folder structure, and then we will also talk about the little bit about boot process, but I will cover that in detail in the next episode. Alright, so let's get started. And so when in the previous episodes we have seen that we generated a project called Simple CRM, right? It's a CRM tool that we are going to build, and this is how it looks when you create a new project. So these are some of the project folders and the default directory structure that you get, right? So I will walk through each one of the folder, explain you the importance, some of the key fundamental concepts that you should understand in the folder structure. Let's get started. So the first thing that you see in the project is the project folder, right? So that in our case, it's Simple CRM. That's the name that you get when you do a ng new project name, right? So that's the first top level root folder that you see, right? Inside that you would see E2E folder, right? So E2E is nothing but that's the end-to-end test cases, right? End-to-end test scripts. Now this is the repo which most of the automation scripts are written by your QA engineers, right? So when you see the word E2E, it means end-to-end functional test scripts. Expand a little bit and you would see source, and this is the main repo, or I would say the folder where you have all your tests inside, right? Now inside source you would see the spec files that you will create, right? So the specs files always ends with .e2e -spec.ts. If for example, if you, in this case the name is app.e2e -spec.ts, which corresponds to your app component, right, or app module. Now if I'm building a users, I would say user.e2e, or let's say login.e2e -spec.ts, right? So remember, all E2E will end with E2E -spec.ts, right? That's the important thing. Will end with .e2e -spec.ts extension. All right. So that being said, the next file that you would see is Protractor.conf.js. So remember that all the end-to-end test scripts are written in Protractor framework, right? That's the framework we use for writing end-to-end, and this comes by default. Okay, it comes by default in Angular applications. Then you are seeing a file called protractor.config.js. So this has all your configuration settings for running the end-to-end test scripts. Okay, so for example, you would see, if you open, you would see that which specs to run, which browser to run, what's the base URL, what's the framework that you are using. So the tests are written in Jasmine, it's run by Protractor. right? So those are all the details that you would see as and when we progress into a testing module. The next is tsconfig. This is the TypeScript configuration that you are writing out. This also has where the output directory should be, right? Like for example, when you run, where should the e2es go, right? So that is your tsconfig, which is your TypeScript tsjson. So this is your basic TypeScript settings that you would find here, right? That was e2e folder. Then the next and the most important folder is your src, which is the entire source code of your application, right? So entire source code of your application is inside src folder, right? Now expand a bit and you would see app folder, which is a default, I would say a module, right? Default app is a default module, and it also has a component, right? So this is app module, which has a app component. So that's where you are seeing the component files which are related to this. So each component will have 3 files, right? So the file would be app.component.html, app.component.scss or css, whichever style sheet you have selected. Then you would have a spec file, which is your unit test script for this particular component. So these are the 3, and then finally and the most important, app.component.ts. This is your class file, right? Template is nothing but your view, or you can say UI or HTML code. Component is your class file, SCSS or CSS is your style sheet for that component. Now it's a module, so that's why it has app.module.ts, right? What is a module, what are components? We'll cover it little later in maybe down the line 2-3 episodes, so stay tuned, don't worry too much about it today. All right, so that being said, the next important folder in the source would be your assets folder, right? So assets folder is nothing but all your assets. Like for example, you might want to have images or mock data or APIs, right? That's the URLs that you want to have, or say some kind of PNGs, thumbnails. All those can be kept inside assets. Then comes the folder environments. Now, whenever you are developing an application, it's rarely that you would do in your local system, right? So you will have a settings for your local system, you will have your settings for your dev environment, you will have for local dev, local environment, you will have for dev, you will have for UAT, QA, right? QA, UAT, and pre-prod or prod, etc. Right? So we will have our environment files that will be created here. So when you see environment.prod.ts, it means that this is a production file. These are the settings which are required for your production environment. Similarly, when you want to create different environments, you'll create new files like environment.dev.ts, environment.qa.ts, etc. That will point to your, those files will point to the respective environments. Then comes your favicon, which is nothing but the image that is shown in the URL browser toolbar, right? So that's your favicon. That's your identity of your website. And then comes the main file, which is index.html, right? So remember that Angular is a single page application, right? So what do I mean by single page application? That means there is only one index.html. That's all. There is no other HTML pages, right? And that is because what happens is everything gets dynamically generated and inserted into the HTML file. So there is really no other HTML other than index.html. Now just a glimpse of index.html. You see it has only the metadata of HTML, right? Like the header, head tag, the body, the links, and finally in the body you will see only app root. So there is only one tag, which is app root, and nothing else in the index.html, which means all the application will be dynamically generated and inserted into this particular directive. Right? We'll learn about that as and when we progress. So there would be few things. If you are an absolute beginner, this may look little confusing to you, tricky, but trust me, as we progress, I'll make sure that you understand it with live example. Right? For now, the important thing that you have to understand and know is there is a directive called approot, and that is what which inside that we will generate the code dynamically at runtime. All right. The next file is main.ts. Now this is extremely important file because this tells where it should bootstrap. So if you see here, there's the most important thing is this line number 11, right? This tells your application what is the first thing it should bootstrap with. That means what is the first thing it should start with. That's why you will see something called Bootstrap Module, right? Which is the module you want to start your application with. By default, it is app module. But in most practical use cases, this can be changed and should be the authentication module. What happens is the first time you launch an application, it will call your authentication and make sure that whether you're logged in or not, right? But in the default application, if you see the Bootstrap module, it's by default app module. And no points for guessing. Can you guess where this app module is? That's right, it's inside the source, this app module.ts that we saw, right? We'll learn in detail. This is step-by-step linking. Now you will be able to link the entire folder structure. So this is the same app module that you are booting what is here, right? So as we progress along, we will make customization, we will add authentication, so we will have to change this. We'll come to that later. Think that this is the starting point, right? So this is the starting point of your application. A lot of times in interviews, they ask you, like, if I want to change the Bootstrap module, which one I should change or where should I change? So your answer is it's in main.ts and you will update your Bootstrap module, right? Now, another question that is asked is it necessary? Can we bootstrap with multiple modules, or can we have a different module other than app module? Yes, we can always have any other module in our Bootstrap, right? So there is no mandatory that it should always be app module, right? Now that was about main.ts. Now Polyfills is used for supporting the older versions of browsers, right? This is for supporting older browsers, right? So this does it on its own. There is nothing much we do here, or in your live projects you will not be doing anything changes to Polyfills at all. It's a default library that we use, so there is nothing really needed that you will change it unless you're working on something which is very browser specific or in terms of a particular browser. The next one is the styles.scss. I have used SCSS, that's why it is style.scss. If you are using CSS, you will see this file as style.css. Alright, so this is nothing but these are the global style sheet, right? Global style sheet for global styles. For example, if you are, say, you want to apply a particular link color, right? That should be common, so you can put it in global styles so that every link in your application will be same, right? So these are some of the common style sheets, I would say, right? Common, or you can say global style sheet for elements. All right, so this is an example. So the next and important thing is test.ts. Now this is your test script for the main.ts file, right? So in some of the interviews, they will a question was also asked by one of our viewer in Angular 9 series, that what is the difference between main.ts and test.ts, right? So the difference is main.ts is the main file through which you start your application. It's a starting point. and test.ts is the test script for that main.ts, right? So basically you are testing the main.ts file code. Whatever is there in main.ts, you're testing it here in test.ts. So if you see here, it is the same thing that you would see what is there in your main.ts. Alright, so that being said, the next file that you will see is browser list.rc. Not much that you have to do here, so don't worry about it. The important file, another important, very important file is angular.json. Now this is, I would say, the backbone, right? If main.ts is the heart, angular.json is your backbone of your application, right? Why? Because it has all the settings, it has all the scripts, details, ports, settings that your application need to run, right? Let me show you. Don't hurry, don't rush into too many things. It's a big file. Overall, what you need to understand is that this file will have the scripts to run. So whenever we use ng CLI, right, Angular CLI, so these are the schematics, right? It will have your project details, the project name, the version, the projects that you have inside your this particular project, and what is the style sheet you're running, what's the source root, prefix, and how do you build, serve, right? So all these are here, right, inside angular.json schematics. Now what are schematics? Nothing but like when you run Angular CLI commands, those commands are defined here, like build, serve, test, all those are defined here in angular.json, right? So take time, go through it. Even if you don't understand something, it's fine today. We will change them as we go along to customize into our real-time application. We will learn each and everything as we reach there. Don't rush into learning. Take it one step at a time. Alright, so the next thing is karma.conf.js. So we learned that there will be unit test scripts, right? Like app.component.spec.ts. So all the testing files will end with spec.ts. If it's a unit test script, it will just be spec.ts. If it's end to end, it will be e2e dot spec hyphen spec.ts, right? So that's how we know. So karma is your runner, test script runner, right? So using which we will run all our tests, right? So this is for running or executing all our test scripts. All right, so very important. And here again you can configure things like which are the frameworks you're working with. So we are telling that we'll be using Jasmine, so we require these plugins. And then we are also telling that what's the port number it has to run, which browser to run, whether it is single run or multiple runs, etc, etc, right? So those are the configurations for running your test. So this is your file to change any settings of it. Alright, so the next and important files are package.json and package-lock.json. So this I will cover it in next episode in detail, right? This is for next episode. So make sure you stay tuned for that, because I'm going to explain. This is an important two files which are there if you want to work. So stay tuned for the next episode as well. And then the next files that are there are tsconfig, right, tslint. So these are nothing but, let me cover them here. tsconfig and tslint are for TypeScript settings, right? How you want your code base, the linting should work. What are your configurations for your application in terms of TypeScript, right? So if you go here, you'll see the TypeScript you're running on ES 2015 target, module is ES 2020, and then you have importers help, right, true, and then declaration, source map, what is the output directory, and what is the base href URL. So all these settings are very important from perspective that when you deploy where it should go, right? So these are all the settings that we have to do when you are working, especially in terms of deployment, right? Alright, so you can customize the output directory when we say ng build and all that. So this is your build output directory, source map, and much more, right? So just take a look at it, go through it, you'll understand. When we reach build application, we will again go through that and change them also. All right, and then we have something called Tslint. Now this is linting, which is nothing but how the errors should be, or warnings should be, and highlighting should be, the spacing, like for example the code lizer, and then recommended, the severity should be warning, what are the imported blacklist, maximum line length. So these are basically enforced, right? So if you look at any complex enterprise application, they will enforce coding standards, right? And that coding standards are defined here in this file. So whenever you're new to any project or any company, the first thing you should check is the TS linting, to make sure how, usually it will highlight with yellow color, right? If you don't have the correct spacing, if you don't have the correct nomenclature, it will start showing up and all that. So make sure that you check out the TS lint file so that you understand what's the coding standard set by your organization. Alrighty, so that being said, that brings us to the end of the folder structure, and I hope that now you are pretty much comfortable with what these files stand for, what each of this folder does, what each of this file will do for your application. In the next episode, I will cover in detail about package.json, how it works, package-log.json. All of that we'll cover it in the next episode, because it's a topic which will be an ongoing thing that we'll do. That's why I've separated out into next episode. Please drop me any comments or questions that you have. I will be happy to answer them. In the next episode, I will also talk a little bit about the bootstrap booting process of Angular, and then we will talk about package and package lock. I hope you're enjoying the series. I'm putting in a lot of hard work in this particular series. I'll appreciate if you can like, share, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Also, if you want, you can buy me a coffee at the given link here. Thank you in advance. Thank you so much. See you soon in the next episode.